Hello and welcome everybody. My name is JD and I am a student resolution specialist here at UAGC and I'll be your host for this session. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Additionally, we've enabled live transcription, so if you'd like to use it, click the show captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to today's presenters to introduce themselves and jump right in. Thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, JD. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for spending your mornings or afternoons with us, depending where you're located. Today, Elie and I are going to be talking about operationalizing core values, mission statements, and protocols for team learning. My name is Mike Bota. I am the co-founder and director of academics of Interview Education, and I'm also a PhD student in learning design and technology at Wayne State University.
Hey everyone, my name's Elie. I'm co-founder and director of community at Interview Education with Mike, and I'm the Peace teacher at Lafayette Elementary and public elementary school in Washington, D.C.
And this is a picture of Elie and I on Zoom. I'm in Detroit, Michigan, and Elie's in DC. So we spend a lot of our collaboration time together virtually. So, we got to have some fun with it. Okay, I'm curious about what connects us and who all is in the room. So if we could get some folks to please say their name, role, and reason for being here, whether that's this conference or this session. And you can either share aloud or in the chat. Or if microphones are muted, it might just be in the chat. I'd love to hear some folks. Awesome. Nice to meet you, Tina. Adjunct. Awesome. Nice. Department head looking for ways to strengthen the team. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Sabrina and Ryan.
Nice. Curious about ways to help foster team learning, theories or considerations. I'm a PhD student, so we will talk about some theories today. I'll try not to get too heady, but I might get a little heady. Awesome. Lead faculty support, program chairs, assistant deans here to learn. Nice. We're all here to learn. I love how we all embody what it is we're practicing, what we preach. Well, super great to meet you all. Thank you so much for posting in the chat and engaging with us. We look forward to the session and hopefully having a little bit more engagement as well. This next part here, we're going to see how this is going to work, given muted if folks want to come off mic. JD, are folks allowed to come off mic?
I believe that people should be able to.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to come off mic, you're more than welcome to.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so Elie and I, whenever we meet together, we run through a team meeting protocol. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but we wanted to model it first. Essentially, what we do in our team meeting protocols is we read our mission statement, sentence by sentence, popcorning back and forth. And then we read our core values, sentence by sentence, popcorning back and forth. And then we answer a set of questions about it. So we'd love if we could do that together as a community for what the mission of this conference is and what the core values of this conference is. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first one. Elie will read the second one, and then we'd love if some folks would be willing to jump in and just like read one statement at a time. So we'll see the energy in the space here. So I'll get started. How do organizations ignite a culture of continuous learning? One that empowers every member to grow, thrive, and actively shape the organization's future.
Senge challenged us to think bigger, introducing 5 powerful disciplines that advance an organization's potential to create its future.
Now comes the teacher wait time of popcorn.
I used to teach third grade, so I'm good at this. Guided by this framework, the TLC learning community will discover how these dynamic principles come to life through real-world practices and perspectives of students, faculty, and staff at all levels and across every discipline.
Thank you, Allison. Next, we have the core values, or the 5 disciplines of team learning. So again, we'll keep popcorning along.
I'll go. Education cannot wait. That wait time is hard for us. So systems thinking involves understanding the interconnectedness of various components. It encourages contemplating the whole and recognizing patterns and relationships versus individual components of a system.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mental models are deeply ingrained assumptions and generalizations that influence how we understand the world and take action. By challenging and refining these models through reflection and discourse, organizations can foster a culture of continuous learning.
Thank you, Teresa. We got just 3 left. And we invite the U of A folks too, if you want.
I'll do a shared vision. It is a common goal that inspires and unites members of an organization. It provides direction and motivation for continuous learning.
Thank you, Tisha.
I'll read one to keep us moving along. Personal mastery involves individuals continually clarifying and deepening their personal vision, focusing their energies, and developing patience. It is a commitment to lifelong learning.
Thank you, JD. Last one.
I'm shy, but I'll jump in here. Team learning is the process of aligning and developing the capacities of a team to create results its members truly desire. It builds on personal mastery and shared vision, emphasizing collaboration and collective learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Okay, great. So hopefully we feel a little bit grounded in the mission and values of what it is we're doing here for this conference. And next up in Elie and I's team meeting protocols, we answer some questions in relation to those. And we always talk about these questions and our reflections in relation to our personal life and our professional life. So some abridged versions for us today are: how, in your personal or professional life, are you currently resonating with one phrase from that mission statement or those values of this conference? As a reminder, at the bottom, there are those 5 disciplines there: systems thinking, mental models, shared vision, personal mastery, and team learning. So if folks either want to write a little blurb in the chat or go ahead and share aloud, how, either in your personal life or your professional life, are you currently resonating with one of these phrases? Give some folks to think, and then I can share out first to model. So I can say that in both my professional and my personal life, I've been thinking a lot about team learning. Definitely making this presentation, I've been reflecting a lot about team learning in my professional life, in my work with Elie, as well as the various other organizations that I work with, but also in my personal life too. With the holidays coming up, I've been doing a lot of collaborations with my family, and so thinking about like, how is it that we learn together, and how is it that we create like a Thanksgiving meal and day with the least amount of chaos as possible, but also happy chaos. So that's what I've been resonating with.
Nice.
Awesome.
And
Go ahead,
yeah,
Elie.
just as you know, Allison, connecting with team learning and bringing people together in a meaningful way. And feeds people the way they want to be fed. Lots of different preferences, popping up now. And for me, shared vision is resonating with me today. Yesterday, I had a conversation with the principal at my school. We're kind of in like the Halloween hangover period, and we're just trying to get to the holidays, as Mike was mentioning. And so in the school, there's kind of just a lot of morale, pain points from teachers to admin, including parents as well. And so talking about how we can all build a kind of a collective shared vision as a community and what I can do to be a part of that. So shared vision is present for me today.
Thank you, Elie. We can give it just like 15 seconds if anybody else wants to type something in or come off mute. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for sitting with us and connecting with us today. So this is our team meeting protocol. We'll talk a little bit more about it as well. So now that we can really ground ourselves in what it is we're doing today, our agenda and our objectives, we're going to talk about what connects us. We've already started to do that. We're then going to talk about severance in Chicago. We're going to tell a little story about Elie and I getting started in this work. Then we're really going to get to the center of our session, the core of it, which is team learning. And we're going to highlight 3 main examples that we use in our work in order to enliven team learning. We're going to back it up with some theory, and then we're going to wrap it up today and see if you all can maybe reflect on what you've learned and how you could potentially integrate some of this work into your own context. Our objectives for this session are to build community, which we hope we've already started to do. We want to describe 3 examples of team learning operationalized, and then we want to transfer ideas to your respective context. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, with talking about what connects us. So I believe we all work in organizations, whether these are K-12 schools, higher ed, corporate, consulting, whatever it might be. And I believe that most of us, if not all of us, are directing our efforts towards impacting students, both the growth of students and the support of students. We also know that not all organizations are the same, both in terms of like the services that they offer, the resources that they have, and also like the cultures that they have within them. And I believe we all also know that change in organization, like how the organization operates, can change the impact on students. Assuming we can all resonate with that based upon previous jobs we've had, or even just like changes with leadership or whatever's happening in our organizations. And so we want to tell a story about how organizations can affect students and how Elie and I reflected on that in order to create our own learning organization. So Elie and I met, we did Teach for America in Chicago in 2016, and we were both school teachers. Elie was in high school, I was in middle school. And this is a reflection that we've had in hindsight, but it was very much related to the TV show Severance. Has anybody seen the show Severance before? I see a couple head nods here. So main idea of severance is basically like that there is a split, you're severed from your work self and your self outside of work. And again, we didn't have the show to like give us that analogy at the time, but Elie and I noticed that split. We may have been a little bit young and idealistic at the time, but either way, it was very stark to us. You know, we would come in as teachers and we would have staff meetings with the whole school, and they could be very logistical. Like the staff meetings were very much about like the next standardized test or about attendance or about various other data points or GPA. Which, yes, is all very important, but it felt just like dry and overly logistical. And then we had the students that we dealt with all the time. And they were these young, rambunctious, curious, very human loving, like humans. And it felt like there was just a mismatch between like the humanity of the students and the logistical nature of school. And we noticed how that organizational and that structural severance also manifested in the severance of our students. Elie has this quote that he said back then in Chicago that like we just absolutely love, which is that he could ask his students their GPA value and they would name it very quickly. But if he was to ask them their human value, they had a very hard time articulating what their response would be. And so we began to reflect that like organizational severance, this idea that we cut off like the logistics from the humanity, can often manifest in the severance of the individual and how our students knew their GPA value much more than their human value. And so we reflected on that and we wanted to do something about that. So we set out to create our own learning organization in an effort to impact students more positively. Anything you want to add to that, Elie?
We didn't know it was going to be like a learning organization at the time. We knew it was going to be around education, but as it kind of, again, fit into this model that we've learned and are presenting now, we were just hoping to provide some change to the educational environment that offered students solutions to their connecting with themselves and their community in the world that wasn't present in our schools.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Elie. And like you was just saying, like we did not set out to create a learning organization. The first thing that we did, which is that bottom line there, is we created a set of core values, a mission statement, and a set of protocols to use. Like that was just the first little nugget of stuff that we created together. And we have since been working together for over 5 years now. And just, grounding us all in the space, I'm sure you all have seen this already, but again, the fifth discipline has these 5 components of how to create a learning organization. Ours, in reflection, touches on all of these, and as Senge talks about, these are all interconnected, but we're going to focus in on team learning, and so that's where we want to go today. And so starting out with just our core values, our mission statement, and our protocols, we have fostered a culture of team learning. And so again, just to kind of give some background knowledge and ground us in this, what is team learning? These diagrams to the left are also shown in the book, and we think these are just like great reminders of what team learning is and can be. And it's this idea about the relationship between the individual and the team. If we think about the smaller arrows as like individual people, and then the bigger arrows or the boxes like the team. You can have really big individuals. You can have individuals who are superstars, but if they're not going in the same direction as everybody else, then the team is not going to move forward. And Senge first lays this out, and then he says that the major key components of team learning are shared vision, dialogue and discussion, conflict and defensive routines, and practice. And so again, just kind of giving that background knowledge of what it is we're talking about today before we move forward.
Yeah, and just mapping this onto to the sports world, to any coaching setting, this is why the best super teams don't always win championships. They may have the best players on paper, but have the members of that organization as individuals come around a collective shared vision, whether it's an elementary school basketball team, go Bears, or the Los Angeles Lakers losing to the Thunder or the Dodgers. True, but yes, you could also argue that, right? It's people putting behind their big ego for the collective benefit of the team. Thanks, Allison.
We love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so how is it that Elie and I have taken our core values, our mission statement, and our protocols in order to enliven and operationalize team learning? Again, some background knowledge, sharing vocabulary, core values are just guiding beliefs and principles. Mission statements are purpose-driven organizational statements. Protocols are structured processes for collaboration. Now, conscious or not, every organization has these, whether they're listed on a website or not listed on a website. Like every organization has implicit core values, like guiding beliefs and principles of how people work in that space. Like that could be like the brand of whatever the space is. Everything is working towards something. There's a purpose towards every collective effort, whether that's consciously articulated or not. And there's also protocols, like there just becomes norms for how to do stuff. There's structured processes for collaboration. So wondering, do you all know yours? Like if you think about your own organization, do you know your core values, your mission statement, and the protocols that you use? Go ahead and just take a moment to reflect on that for a sec. And write down what comes up for you. Like, do you notice yourself drawing a blank? Can you easily start to pick out various phrases from your mission statement or core values that you know are embodied? Just go ahead and reflect on that for a sec. What comes up with you when you think about you and your organization? And I can open it up to see if anybody's willing to share, whether that's in the chat or coming off mute. Just what came up for you when you thought about that?
I think at UAGC, and I should speak for myself, but I think we're really good about our mission and our core values. We talk a lot about, especially in the division I oversee, about core values and our why and what brings us to work. I don't think we're as great about protocols.
Mm.
I think there's a lot of kind of under the surface, this is kind of how we operate, but we don't necessarily voice that or put that into writing and expectations. So that kind of is lingering in my mind as how we can improve that.
Right on. Thank you very much for sharing.
I appreciate those thoughts, Allie, and I want to jump into, so Elie and Michael, you have a group of UAGC folks here, and I'm a member of our Culture of Care Council, which is an initiative that we've been pursuing for several years now in defining our guiding beliefs and principles, and we call it the culture of care. And so I would say those are aligned with our core values and our mission, but would agree with Allie that we're just getting to the point where we're really unpacking what are those processes that support, or what's the structure that supports those values. For example, we this year in our annual performance employees evaluations, we are all using competencies that are aligned with those core values to assess our work. So I think that's a step towards structuring processes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Love that word alignment. That'll come up in our session a little bit too, but it's just huge to be thinking about the alignment between these pieces and like their explicit articulation. And I see Kelly in the chat here with new organizational structures, needing time to create a new vision and mission of those teams. Well, great. Thank you all so much for sharing. Hope those reflections were fruitful, and we can try to ground them in Elie and I's experiences as well. So one of the arguments that we're making in our session today is that team learning is, I mean, it can be, but it is enlivened through these. So the way in which your core values, mission statements, and protocols exists in your space is and can be a direct manifestation of a team learning culture. And we want to go ahead and walk through 3 examples of how Elie and I do that. So how do we concretely, in practice, enliven these mission statements, protocols, and core values in order to create a culture of team learning? And so the first practice that we do, I'm going to pass over to Elie for him to talk about.
Thanks. This is a screenshot from our Notion page, which is our project management tool, which we use. Mine's in dark mode, so that's why it's dark. Mike's in light mode, so his is in white, but it's the same thing. And this is how we start and how we open each team meeting that we have when we're on Zoom together. We'll connect with each other and catch in on each other's days or whatever's going on with a little banter. Then we'll take a few breaths together to ground ourselves in the present and set an intention for what we would like to do as a team and achieve as a team in this meeting. And then we open up this toggle of core values. You can see 2 of them there. Process is as important as the product, and empower the learner. These are 2 of our 7 core values. So just as we did in the beginning with popcorning the core values and mission statement of this conference, we just do that for interview. So Mike will read one, I'll read the other. Then we move to our mission statement, opening up that toggle, reading our why we do the work statement, our how we do the work statement, and our what we do. Once we've read that together, we take a few moments to select different questions about the work that we do together in interview and ourselves, who we are in our work beyond interview or in our personal lives. And we'll just take a few moments to spend time reflecting and connecting. Once we've done that written reflection, then we unmute and share what's coming up for us and how our work selves or our selves are aligned to our core values and mission statement. How are they showing up in the work that we're doing? And there's a home plate there because we very much treat this protocol, this team meeting opening protocol, as our kind of grounding home center for our rapport and relationship as friends and colleagues. but also reorienting ourselves to the field that we're playing on with interview and the mission of our work and the values that drive us. And so this is one of our protocols.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Elie. Just kind of want to note, like if you have a larger team, this can feel like a lot and it can feel like a big lift. One of the things to note is like flexibility always is key. So, Elie and I are lucky. It's just the two of us. We can do this essentially almost every single time we meet. You can make this a bi-weekly phenomenon. You can do this every 3 weeks, whatever works for your space. You can have longer versions, shorter versions. So sometimes like every 6-ish months, Elie and I will do a much longer expanded team meeting. And then sometimes if we just have to really get to work, we'll just do this very quickly. And we also want to note about, again, how at the beginning we modeled, it's about integrating the work and the self. We'll have a slide at the end about like the fear of that statement, about like how some folks can feel like that's not a good thing to integrate the work and the self, and there should be a cutoff. But we actually argue that it's good because this allows us to bring our full self to the space. Like there's been times where we've done this and it's like, oh, there's just something going on with me today that Elie can feel. And like, we need to take a moment to just like recognize that. Otherwise the work's not going to get done as well as it could get done. And so this is always the space for that to happen in a very structured, routine way. So it doesn't feel like it's abnormal to bring your full self to the space. The second thing we do is we have mission statement alignment. So as Elie talked about in our team meeting, our mission statement consists of a why, a how, and a what. Very crudely, we don't want to focus on what our stuff is. We want to abstract this, but on the left, very roughly, our why statement's kind of our theory of the problem, like what we see as the education crisis. Our how statement is very crudely our theory of change, like one of which is community building. We have a couple other ones for like how it is that we respond to what's happening. And then we have our what's, and those are our actual services. So like those are the actual workshops we do, the consultations we have with folks and the projects that we take on. And one of the things about this is like we use this triangle, like we use this why, how, what connection to talk about all feedback and iteration on our actual services. So like, for example, Elie and I are launching a new service this semester and we ran it once with a group of clients and we got feedback on it. And sometimes feedback can be overwhelming because it's like, okay, wait, do we listen to that statement? Like, did we want that? Do we not want that? How do we pivot and move forward? And we always can reflect back like, okay, let's go back to our why statement. Why are we doing this work? Did we achieve that goal? Okay, how do we do this work? Are those how statements being embodied in what this new service is? Do we need to change the service in order to be more in alignment? And so just looking at these things as like why, how, what statements is really helpful to have this alignment. And this connects with Senge's notion of system thinking. Like the system is embodied in everything and all the parts are connected. And this helps us stay connected as a group and helps all of our products be connected back to our main why statement. And we like to think about this as like our mirror. So anytime we do something new, we reflect it against our why, how, and what statements. We also use this when we bring on new employees. So we've like brought on contracted employees before. And we'll do this with them. We'll say like, okay, here's the service that we want your assistance with. Here's how it's connected to how we operate. And here's how it's connected to our ultimate aim in this work. Not only do we just like show that to them, but we invite them into that space. Like, do you have any reflections on that? Do you see that connection? Do you resonate with that why? And so it really helps build team and build culture when we bring new people on. Or if we have people who transition away from us, we also can reflect back to this. Like, okay, now the team dynamic has changed. Let's review our why statement. Are we still in the work for the same reasons? Let's review our how. Let's review all of our what's. So this is the second main takeaway that we think is transferable to other contexts. The last thing we do is protocols. So we talked a little bit about that at the beginning, how some folks have their mission statements well articulated and their core values, but maybe not their protocols. Protocols for us are like our space of practice, to use Senge's language. That's like where the team learning practices come into play. So this really happens with our team meeting. And we also leveraged a couple protocols from the Center for Leadership and Educational Equity, which is an absolutely amazing organization. If y'all are not familiar with them, we highly suggest you check them out. There's some links here. You can also just type in CLEE into Google. The two main protocols that we use, and we like edit and augment them based for our context, but like they are kind of our central protocols, is the tuning protocol. That's a structured way to give feedback on some artifact. We also use a meaning-making protocol, and that's a structured way to make meaning, to build collective sense-making around an artifact or an experience. And we also use nonviolent communication. And this is protocols to help us get rid of our defensive routines and sort of like get rid of any defensive routines, just to stick to the language, and help us reframe to being connected to what our mission statements are and to what's actually going on with the experience of the artifact, the client, etc. So these protocols, again, can be flexible. You can do them synchronously, asynchronously. You can do them in person. You can do them virtually. But those four major components we think are like enlivened through these protocols. Senge talks a lot about dialogue versus discussion. We think that happens in these protocols. He talks a lot about suspended assumptions. The meaning-making protocol actually is based on Chris Argyris's work, and he uses the ladder of inference, which is sort of the same thing as suspended assumptions. And that comes out in the meaning-making protocol. And so when we use that, it helps us suspend our assumptions. We can think about something like more concretely. It helps us break down power dynamics because sometimes one of us feels like our voice is louder than the other person. When we have new team members, sometimes they feel like, intimidated by us in the space. And so using these protocols gives everybody like a structured way to engage and a structured time. And so it really dismantles any power dynamics so everybody can feel collegial in the space. So we love protocols. So, highly, highly rep these. So these are our three main things that we want to talk about today that we think are transferable from other contexts and have really helped us. These three things we like to say are the flywheel of not only our organization, but also of team learning in general. This is Jim Collins's work. He talks about the flywheel. The flywheel is a mechanical construct. It's something that maintains the inertia or momentum of some machine, whether that's like a car or like a cotton gin or whatever it might be. It's that big wheel that you see in the picture to the left. And for us, like our core values, protocols, and our mission statement is our organizational flywheel. Like coming together in team meetings and talk about this is how we build momentum and connection as a team. Like even if a service of ours doesn't go as well as we would have thought, we ground ourselves back in team learning. Like, what are we doing here? How are you feeling as a person? How are you feeling in this work? And that like gets the momentum back up regardless of what happens. Again, connecting back to Senge, he talks about shared vision. We think that comes up in team meetings. He talks about system thinking. That comes up in how we do mission alignment with all of our services and products. And he talks about the importance of practice. And we think that that comes up in the protocols that we use. So this slide just kind of orients the connection between all these pieces. More theory because I'm a PhD student and I probably read too much. There's this guy, Louis de Miranda out in Finland, who's doing really interesting work on philosophical health in the workplace. And he uses a similar like triangular structure, which is super interesting. He talks about like your cosmological worldview and how that needs to be connected to what you're doing in the workplace, but very similar. That's like the mission statement. But he's doing super interesting work and also talking about like, how can we use personal professional alignment to help organizations shift during these extremely complex times. So he's been working in like the natural gas industry and helping them figure out how to be more sustainable. He does cool work. This is also grounded in both Eastern and Western spiritual and psychoanalytic thought, like Jay Krishnamurti, Freud, Jung, Senge himself, all talk about the importance of integration. Like they all talk about how fragmented selves are one of the root causes of like pathology, psychological pathology. And so integration, like how is it that we can recognize like we are one person? Like I don't change when I go to work. Like I don't change who I am when I talk with Elie. And so this notion of integration that we're talking about is just backed by lots of Eastern and Western thought. And last thing I'll say here is Adrienne Marie Brown wrote a really cool book in 2017 called Emergent Strategy. And she talks about fractals. And we see our three main practices of team meeting, protocol, and mission alignment like as the main mini fractal that gets expanded into all of the other work that we do. And so again, this like flywheel, this like small fractal of just how we meet, how we stay connected, how we build a culture of learning expands into all of our other projects that we do. So we feel very supported in these adventures. The fear. So the fear of this mindset is that it can become like a brand, like, never stop dreaming, like bring your full self to work. And then everybody gets burned out because the expectations of work is like you're always working. That's what that means. And we would argue that that actually would be in misalignment with what it is that we're talking about. Because you get to bring yourself to work, that means you get to say, like, this is happening in my life and I'm feeling this way, and that's how that's going to affect me today. And there's space that's built for that. So we actually would argue that this is less likely to happen if the strategies that we're talking about are implemented with fidelity. And Elie, if you want to add, I know we were talking about this before.
No, I think it's well framed in that what can be done to help the learning culture of an organization, and reprioritize, the connections and relations you have with your team, and the needs of the team and the needs of the organization. So
Nice, yes. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have to share today. We talked about core values, mission statements, and protocols, and we talked about how those are the flywheel of our team learning and our really entire organization. We talked about how they are our home base. That's what we touch back to. They are our mirror. It's how we reflect on any of our projects or our services, and they're always being iterated on. Like anytime a new team member comes in, anytime somebody has a major thought about something, we open up that space. Like, okay, do we need to change our mission statement? Do we need to change our core values of how we do stuff? And so we want to just reflect this back to you all and pose, like, could you improve your organization's embodiment of team learning based upon anything that we talked about today? So we'll give y'all a minute or so just to silently think, and then feel free to share out by voice or in the chat. Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, we see intentionality in the chat. Intentionality is huge. I mean, I think particularly, yeah, I mean, I think we're just in a time culturally and socially, like, where we all are doing a lot of reflecting on like organizational habits that we are uh, like inheriting as we enter workspaces. And so intentionality is just so big. Like if we do want to make big changes to change culture, to be more sustainable, to be more loving, to be more humanistic, like it definitely is going to take intentionality.
And Allison's point about voicing things, right, that are already set in protocols, but might just be in your own head and not group thinking. One of our core values is be impeccable with your word, even if you're afraid to say it. And so really like being explicit and sharing what you see to be happening. A lot of Senge's writing around the defensive routines are things that like we kind of just assume the group is doing it. And so it's kind of embodied and it's kind of that like inertia, but it hasn't actually been established or clarified yet. And so bringing things and voicing aloud what wonderings you're having is really critical too. Oh, nice.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm seeing supporting care for each other, reflect if they're working. Yeah, being willing to make changes when giving feedback. I think fluidity, like that's the main word that I'm getting from that statement. And this idea that everything needs to be fluid and constantly touched on and checked in on, I think is just like alignment with our nature. Senge also talks a lot about modeling things from nature. And nature is fluid. And so, we in our workspaces also, we would argue, need to be fluid. And yes, Allison, impeccable with your word, comes from the Four Agreements. Dr. Ruiz, I believe, is that book. Love that. Huge, huge, huge. Okay, very cool. I see one more here in the chat. Stephanie, yeah, process over product. Yeah, we also love that phrase. Yeah, I won't go off on it. So in summary here, a lot of this journey from Ellie and I's began because of a feeling of severance. Again, the show was not out then, but like we felt this in our bodies, in our minds, like just, our systems can be very separated. And we saw how that was impacting students. Like students could literally, it's like, what's your GPA? They knew what that was. It's like, oh, what makes you unique? And they had no idea what to say. And that's, we would argue, is a major problem. And so because of that, we have created a learning organization. We believe that core values, protocols, and mission statements can operationalize team learning and our flywheel. The three main practices that we do are in the top right there. Team meetings help us build shared vision. Mission alignment is systems thinking, and protocols is where all the practice takes place. Just a little proof in the pudding. Some of the projects Ellie and I do. This is one of our services we had with a group of clients in the Zoom there. And then this is also Ellie just like being a boss, giving a speech. So this is us. Any questions? And I see in the chat here, how did we hear about TLC? From one of Ellie's connections, Sarah, right?
Dr. Sarah Steinberg, one of our mentors and advisors. And she used to work with UAGC. So we've been following and kind of on the newsletter and kind of communications for a while now. And when we saw the heart and soul of a learning organization, we were just so drawn to the theme of this year's TLC and the continued work of UAGC. So yeah, we're grateful to be connected with you all, and thank you.
Thank you both so much. And people can continue to put questions in the chat as we wrap up. We still have a few minutes, but I do want to remind you all there is a survey link in the chat, and we'd be really happy for you to fill that out, nominate any presentations for conference awards, and share your feedback so we can provide it back to our presenters. But yeah, thank you both for an amazing presentation. I didn't put in the chat earlier, but I think this is a great concept, especially for the many of us that work remotely. It's really easy to feel like your work self is separate from like your life because you're not around those people every day. And these are really great suggestions and practices. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much, JD. And thank you all for hosting this conference. And thank you all for showing up and participating. We really, really appreciate it.